I started learning the recorder when I was only 4 years old. That makes me feel very old now. I then moved on to learning how to play the clarinet, which is my great love. I then learnt the piano, and naturally followed on from the clarinet was the saxophone and then the flute. I've even been known to play the triangle. So I play in lots of orchestras, I play in pit bands for musicals, I give chamber ensembles with my friends, and I give solo performances. Basically, I do as much music as I can outside of running 2 businesses. First one's a training company, and the second one's an IT consultancy. But this talk is about how I blend music and how I feel that it benefits my corporate life. So I was really lucky in the school that I started out in. Music was embedded in the fabric of the curriculum. It was everywhere. There were recorder clubs, there was orchestras, there was choirs, we sang in assembly. There was so much going on. It was very vibrant. Plus I had an encouraging family supporting me, and also all my friends were also involved. But I didn't realise at the time this was actually training my brain differently. Learning a musical instrument had a huge impact on the way that my brain was working. Playing a musical instrument can actually increase your IQ by 7 points. That's not only children, that's also in adults. The University of Zurich did some studies, and they found that in age 65 plus, those that actually started playing a musical instrument did just 1 hour per week. There were significant changes in their brains, also in hearing, in memory, and in hand control. They've done functional MRI scans of professional musicians. They've put them in an MRI scanner while they're playing an instrument, just to see what happens. Both hemispheres of the brain were engaged at the same time. Predominantly the right hemisphere, which is the one that creates the creativity and the art side. But the Journal of Neuroscience has also established that music helps the brain if it's suffered some kind of trauma. It can help rehabilitate the brain. Simple things, banging the drums, playing on a piano, it helps the brain recover. There was a very famous composer called Benjamin Britten, a British composer, and he composed some beautiful pieces of music. And he sustained several strokes towards the latter part of his life. Whilst he lost the ability to speak, he could still do music and he could still compose. So music does help with cognitive brain training. But in a world where there's increased anxiety, depression, work-life balance, failed work-life balance, we're all so good at not doing it well. Digital overwhelm, social media, I call it the curse of the red dot. There's so many notifications when you look at your phone or your tablet. It is very overwhelming. So I see music as my way of escapism, my way of relaxing. So I'd like you all to try and help me with an experiment. Okay, so I didn't tell you what I was going to do then, but you all joined in with no instructions. And by the way, you've all just completed an audition for the Queen We Will Rock You live tour. But music transcends language, it transcends race, religion, it breaks down barriers. It gives you those feel-good endorphins. I can only imagine what it must have been like in the stadium when Freddie Mercury jumped onto the stage in a Live Aid concert. He had that whole stadium in the palm of his hand, and they were all joining in. It must have felt amazing, those real feel-good endorphins. So it started thinking me about the skills that I do know automatically just through being a musician and how I then use them in my business and in my corporate life. So I started thinking about the different roles in music. The first one is the conductor, the leader of the orchestra, the ultimate communicator, with a few hand movements, a few gestures, even eye movements. We all know exactly what they want them to do. And there was a conductor that I used to play with where you didn't want the death stare, you didn't want to make a mistake. So if you think about Belbin's team roles, they were sort of saying that there needs to be a good leader, there needs to be a creative person, there needs to be a starter, there needs to be a finisher, an implementer. All of these roles exist in music. So playing in an orchestra or an ensemble, you're learning how to be a team player, how to communicate with a group of people, ones that maybe you don't even know. You might have to walk into a room to do a rehearsal and people you don't even know. And this is very similar to if you're walking into a room at a conference or an event and you've got to stand up and do a 60-second pitch. And I was thinking about roles like the improviser in jazz music. You still need a creative ideas person in your team. Music gives you confidence, especially if you're a woodwind person. You quite often have to play solos and orchestral pieces. So the confidence that I learnt through music, I then translated through to running my business, standing up in front of, talking in front of people, leading meetings. It also taught me patience, how to wait my turn. In an era where smartphones and tablets are becoming more and more prevalent, and we're giving them to our children to entertain them, they're learning that everything's instant, everything quick, you don't have to wait for things. Well, actually, in music, you do have to wait. You might have to count bars rest. You might have to wait while the strings work out what bowing they're going to do. I've experienced that many times. Travelling to concerts, it just gives you that no fear factor of you've got to get yourself to that stadium, to that concert hall, to that village hall in the middle of nowhere. When I first started out as a teenager, I couldn't wait to learn how to drive. And it was the days before sat-nav, so we had huge maps trying to work out where to get to this concert. But it just meant that in business, I have no problem jumping on the train, getting on a plane, going to wherever I need to be. It doesn't hold me back. I also learnt multitasking skills through music. So things like switching instruments. If I'm playing in a musical, quite often I'm switching between saxophone, clarinet, flute. I'm trying to watch the conductor. I'm trying to listen to what's going on stage, read the music. These are all skills that you need as a business owner. But finally, it taught me pressure and resilience, especially if you're performing. If you make a mistake, you have to just carry on going. You almost can't let it show on your face. The audience isn't going to know whether you've sung a verse in the wrong order. It's about the performance and them enjoying it. The show must go on. So with music, one of the greatest skills is listening, being quiet, learning to play in harmony together. Again, these are skills that you need in a team, learning to listen to each other, giving each other a chance to speak. Your brain's actually wired differently if when you're listening to music you experience that shiver. I don't know whether anyone's ever felt that, but I do feel that in certain types of music. There's one piece in particular. I'm just going to play it to you. So, very famous tune there from E.T., written by John Williams, the songsmith. People use John Williams because he can come up with those amazing film scores, those amazing catchy tunes that we all hook into. And I still feel emotional now when I think about E.T. Not only was it brilliant acting, brilliant directing, the music made that film. And he used that tune throughout the whole thing. When they were flying through the air, when E.T. was dying, when he was alive, don't go, stay, and it was just all these emotions. One of the most amazing experiences I had was going down to London, and there was a film orchestra playing alongside live to the E.T. film, and they played the entire film soundtrack while the film was going on. And I was in bits listening to this music live. It was going through me. I just felt all of the emotions. But if you think about films like Jaws, such a simple piece of music, those two little notes inciting fear in all of us, without that music, you'd just be watching the sea and maybe a fin popping up. It wouldn't be anywhere near as scary, but that music evokes that panic and that fear in us. Star Wars, the throne room, at the end, they go up to collect their medals. Think about how the gravitas of that amazing Star Wars music really makes that scene, without which it would just be three people walking up a crowded room, awkwardly collecting some medals. It wouldn't have anywhere near the same impact if we've just killed the Death Star. So music is very much a big part of my life. But running an IT company, we've got IT developers working for us, and quite often they're doing code and they're writing really geeky technical stuff. And I see them putting headsets on, and this is so they can concentrate. They listen to music to help them be more productive in their jobs. I was reading an article in Classic FM quite recently, and it was talking about studies between the correlation between musical training and academic success. This is not only in children, but in adults as well. Improved memory, improved abstract reasoning skills. These are skills that we need in the STEM subjects, the maths and the sciences. So, what next? 20% of children learn to play music. 70% of adults wish they had. There's a brilliant sketch by the British comedian Eddie Izzard, where he talks about his experience of learning a musical instrument at school and playing in the school band. And he talks about a child and a parent discussing learning a musical instrument. And the parent says, "Little Johnny, you shall play the violin." And the child's like, "But I don't want to play the violin." And the parent's like, "But you will play the violin because I had never had the opportunity." "Well, you've got the opportunity now, why don't you do it now?" "Because I'm very important and I have to watch TV and drive cars about." I can't deliver it like he can, but it's a brilliant sketch. But don't we make ridiculous excuses as adults as to why we can't do things? Because I'm important and driving cars about and watching TV, that's not a reason. The BBC did some documentaries on a failing school, really interesting series, and they were thinking, how can we turn this school around? And they thought they'd try something different. They put in a music teacher. That music teacher formed groups, clubs. The children were doing several hours of music every day, learning instruments, playing together. That school went from being a failing school to being one of the most successful, academic-wise, in the whole of the UK. They've also done documentaries on getting communities together, so a community of people where none of them had ever played a musical instrument, and forming a rock choir. It brought that whole community together. They didn't need to know how to read music, they just went with it and had a fantastic experience. So why not form company choirs? Why not create ensembles? Why don't we have the lunch break? Why are we all starting work earlier and earlier, working through our lunch breaks, working later and later and later, answering social media notifications at midnight, answering emails after work? We've only got one life, so why not live it well? And in a society where we're having increased anxiety, depression, sickness, mental health is really, really important. So why not get your instruments back out? Many of you probably got them in the wardrobe, sitting there gathering dust. So if music is the fuel of business, what are you going to do? What are you going to do differently? How are you going to inspire the children in your life? How are you going to take this forward into the workplace? So if music is the fuel of business, I'm going to play on.